Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Shrutarasda Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Abhayacharanavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Shrutarasda Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Gaur Bhaktivrinda Ki Jai. Janitai Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This morning we were reading from Canto 3, Chapter 13, The Appearance of Lord Varahadev, text number 18. Please recite. Iti abhidhyayato nasa. Iti abhidhyayato nasa. Vivarat sahasanaga. Vivarat sahasanaga. Varaha toko niragad. Varaha toko niragad. Angushta parimanakaha. Angushta parimanakaha. Iti abhidhyayato nasa. Vivarat sahasanaga. Varaha toko niragad. Angushta parimanakaha. Dhyayato nasa. Vivarat sanaga. Varaha toko niragad. Angushta parimanaka. Matadis. Iti abhidhyayato nasa. Varaha toko niragad. Angushta parimanaka. Iti. Thus. Abhidhyayataha. While thinking. Nasa vivarat. From the nostrils. Sahasa. All of a sudden. Anaga. O sinless one. Varaha tokaha. A minute form of Varaha, a boar, niragat, came out, angushta, the upper portion of the thumb, parimanakaha, of the measurement. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation, O sinless Vidura, all of a sudden while Brahma was engaged in thinking, a small form of a boar came out of his nostril. The measurement of the creature was not more than the upper portion of a thumb. So read to text 22, which has a small purport. Tasyabi pashyata kastaha kshanena kila bharata gajamatra pravavridde tad adbhutam abhunmahat. Translation, O descendant of Bharata, while Brahma was observing him, that boar became situated in the sky in a wonderful manifestation as gigantic as a great elephant. Marichi pramukhair viprei kumarer manuna saha drishtva tat sokaram rupam tarkayam asa chitradha. Translation, struck with wonder at observing the wonderful boar-like form in the sky, Brahma with great brahmanas like Marichi, as well as the Kumaras and Manu, began to argue in various ways. Kimetat sukara vyajam sattvam divyam avastitam aho bhattascharyan idam nasaya me vinisritam. Translation, is this some extraordinary entity come in the pretense of a boar? It is very wonderful that he has come from my nose. Text 22. Drishto angushta shiro matraha kshanad ganda shila samaha api svid bhagavanesha yagyo me kedayan manaha. Translation, first of all, this boar was seen no bigger than the tip of a thumb, and within a moment he was as large as a stone. My mind is perturbed. Is he the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu? Purport. Since Brahma is the supermost person in the universe, and he had never before experienced such a form, he could guess that the wonderful appearance of a boar was an incarnation of Vishnu. The uncommon features symptomatic of the incarnation of Godhead can bewilder even the mind of Brahma. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadagamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriya Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we should not forget to give all due credit to Lord Brahma, the Adi Guru, you could say, of our Sampradaya, the Brahma Madhava Gaudiya Sampradaya. If you read the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, there Arjuna and Krishna are having a discussion about lust, which is defined as being the eternal enemy of the conditioned soul, the all-devouring eternal enemy of the conditioned soul, which essentially means the tendency to enjoy separately from Krishna. So there Krishna says that lust has 3 hiding places. The most grossest place where lust hides is the senses. So we know Prahlad Maharaj says, Yan maitunadi grihmedi sukhamitucham kandu yene eva karayor iva dukkha dukkam. So the sense of touch, lust resides there. our eyes, where we look, lust resides in our eyes. So like that, our senses are explained to be the hiding places of lust. And then of course, what can be said about our mind? Our mind is also filled with lust as well. And then the intelligence. Now if you study that picture of the chariot, there you'll see the chariot of the body, that more important than the horses, the senses, more important than the reins, which is the mind, is the intelligence. So Brahma's intelligence has been completely spiritualized, it's been completely Krishnized by dint of his tapasya, by dint of his following the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just like we were discussing, Bhagavad Prabhu was discussing earlier on, or rather last week, that Srila Prabhupada was explaining in the purport, that if the disciple or the son is willing to follow the instructions of the father, then the guru is willing to give he's willing to instruct the disciple 10 times as much. And that means we can get 10 times as much blessings, and we can advance in Krishna consciousness 10 times faster. If we have that, what is it? Sevaya and Pariprashna Sevaya, that attitude. The attitude of service, and by rendering service to the spiritual master, we have the prerogative to then question from the spiritual master. And when we get the answers, we can use his answers to advance further in spiritual life. I remember Ganesham Prabhu telling me very early on that if you ask a question in class, especially to more senior Vaishnavas, to pure devotees, especially practical questions about how to practice Krishna consciousness, and you get an answer from them, and you apply that answer in your day-to-day life in Krishna consciousness, just by seeing you applying, endeavoring to apply what a certain Vaishnava has said, Krishna will give you manifold blessings. Even if you're not able to achieve what you initially desired to achieve by following the instruction of the Vaishnava, just by seeing you attempting to follow and submitting yourself to another devotee, Ganesham Prabhu explained that Krishna will give you blessings and he'll give you realization. So it's like a treasure hunt game. So you follow the instructions and you get a realization. And with that realization, he explained, you can ask further, more deeper questions on the subject matter. And then you try to apply that and you get further, more deeper, enhanced realizations. And with that, you ask further questions like that. So that's the process. So Lord Brahma unhesitatingly followed the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he has a lot going for him. He's directly the son of Krishna, Swayambhu. He's a guna avatar. He's the secondary creator of this material universe. He's Pitamaha. If we thought Bhishma was Pitamaha, Lord Brahma is even the Pitamaha of Bhishma. He's the husband of Saraswati, the goddess of learning. And we see, especially in Chaitanya Lila, great pundits, great scholars like Keshava Kashmiri, they submitted themselves to Goddess Saraswati so that they could attain jnana, so that they could attain knowledge. But unfortunately, they misused that knowledge, as was the case with Keshav Kashmiri. And Keshav Kashmiri, when he was reciting the 100 verses glorifying Mother Ganges, we find out later on in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that it was Mother Saraswati herself who made Keshav Kashmiri misquote or misconstruct that verse about the Ganges, where he said Bhavani Bhartu, which indicates that Bhavani, who is the wife of Lord Shiva, Bhartu, has another husband. So already Bhavani means the husband of Lord Shiva. Bhavani Bhartu means that it makes it sound that Bhavani, the wife of Lord Shiva, has another husband. So that word Bhavani Bhartu, Srila Prabhupada explains there in the purport that was the work of Saraswati. So great personalities like Keshav Kashmiri are devotees of Goddess Saraswati, who is none other than the wife of Lord Brahma. So materially speaking, he has tremendous opulence. We see in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna is saying, Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bhavushakaya anantasya buddhayo avyavisayanam. And then he starts talking about followers of the Vedas who don't see Krishna as the goal. Instead, what do they focus on? They focus on the ritualistic activities and the mundane goals of dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Yaimam pushpitam vacham pravadanti avipashita vedavadarata partha nanyat astiti vadina. Such people say there is no other goal to be attained by following the Vedas except for rising to the heavenly planets. Karma Mimamsa philosophy. Then he says, Kamatmanam svarga para janma karma phala pradam kriya bahulam vishesha bhoga ishvarya gatim prati. So what does this mean? Again, this is from the context of people who are Vedavadarathas, who follow the Vedas simply for material benefits. Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna, Kamatmanam svarga para. For such people who have that kam, again, that lust, Lord Krishna explains, for them, the highest goal is svarga. Now take a look at Lord Brahma. Is he from Svargaloka? No. He is in fact from Satyaloka, which is a planetary system far greater in material opulence, in material enjoyment, in whatever facilities are there, conveyances. In the Brahma Samhita it's explained conveyances in terms of what they travel on, how they travel. We see people in Siddhaloka. They have the facility to just fly to any planet, just like Narada Muni. The duration of lifetime in Satyaloka and Brahmaloka is much greater as well. Janma, karma, phala pradam. In terms of janma, Brahma has everything to be proud of. His father is directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Karma, well, he's the original architect of this material universe. So of course, again, there's another source of potential pride in Brahma. Kriya Vishesha Bahulam, which means that such people who are Vedavadas, who follow the Vedas for materialistic goals, they are simply engaged in Kriya Vishesha Bahulam. Kriya refers to, again, ritualistic sacrifices, and they conduct them in great pomp. And they conduct many, many sacrifices to allow them to raise to the heavenly planets. Now think about it. To get to the post of Lord Brahma, you have to do Kriya Vishesha Bahulam. You have to conduct Vedic sacrifices perfectly. Not for one lifetime, but for 100 consecutive births. You have to perform all the Vedic sacrifices perfectly, with no fault, and which is very difficult. We see in the Karma Kanda section that even if one word you say incorrectly, that can ruin the entire sacrifice. And in fact, you'll get the sinful reactions, as was the case with Maharsh Pratuparudra. No, not Pratuparudra. Who is it? Prachina Bharishad. He was doing animal sacrifices, and some of the Brahmanas, they mispronounced the words. And so the animals who were killed in that sacrifice, some of them, they didn't get rejuvenated bodies. So he had to take the sinful reactions for that. And Narada Muni showed him that by way of celestial television, celestial vision. Kriya Vishesha Bahulam, and then Bhoga Ishvarya Gatim Prati. Brahma's planet Satyaloka affords him ample opportunity for material enjoyment, Bhoga, and of course what can be said about Aishvarya. He has tremendous material opulence as well. So material opulence and material enjoyment, Brahma has full facility. Yet we see, because of his transcendental intelligence, which is devoid of lust, Brahma is time and time again surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. At the very beginning of the creation, we saw he surrendered by following the tapasya instructions given to him by Krishna. Yesterday, in one of the classes in the ashram, we were discussing about how Lord Brahma surrendered when he was meditating on top of the lotus flower. Two demons named Madhu and Kaitaba. They came from the earwax of Vishnu, Garbhoda Kashaya Vishnu, as he was lying. And they came to Lord Brahma, they did some tapasya, and they pleased Goddess Lakshmi, who gave them a boon saying that they have Ichchamarn. They'll only die whenever they wanted to. And by that pride that they got, they went and they stole the Vedas, the 4 Vedas from Brahma. Brahma again, what did he do? Immediately he went to Vishnu. And he surrendered to Vishnu. And here we see in the verse Ishwareshwar Prabhu was reading yesterday, Brahma thought, while I have been engaged in the process of creation, the earth has now been inundated by a deluge and has gone down into the depths of the ocean. Now here's the interesting thing. What can we do who are engaged in this matter of creation? It is best to let the Almighty Lord direct us. So Brahma is saying, what can we do who are engaged in this matter of creation, as if he's just doing some lowly job, some sweeper on the street or something like that. The matter of creation is the topmost occupation in this material world, like material occupation. But for Brahma, that material occupation is indeed spiritual. Why? Because it's Krishna's instruction to him. So it's his devotional service. Just like Arjuna fighting with the Kauravas, it seems like a material thing. He's killing their material bodies. He's winning Yashola Basva, Raja Bungshe, Samriddhim. He's winning the unrivaled kingdom. But Krishna says, Tasmat Muttishta Yashola Basva, Jitva Shatru Bungshe Raja Samriddhim, Mayavete Nihata Purvameva, Nimitta Matram Bhavasavya Sachim. You're doing it on my instruction, because I've already glanced at all these people. And by my glancing, their life has already been reduced. So you just be an instrument in my hands to fulfill my desires. So the important point here is that we should not judge pure devotees based on their external situation. Again, another point where Brahma surrendered was when he created the Varnashram system, which Krishna says, Tasya kartaram apimam vidhi akartaram avyayam. Krishna says in the 4th chapter of the Gita, it comes from me, but I'm not affected by it. Lord Brahma himself is the topmost Brahmana. So although he's a devotee, he is part of the Varnashram system. But he creates it as well. So there's difference. Krishna creates the Varnashram system, Brahma creates the Varnashram system, secondarily. But Krishna is unaffected by the Varnashram system, whereas Brahma is affected. Brahma is the topmost Brahmana in this universe. So that is the difference between the primary creator, Lord Krishna or Vishnu, and the secondary creator. But if one looks externally, just like one would think, right, that engaging in material occupation, dealing with the material energy, means that you're in Maya. But Brahma is doing that. But if we see on face value, we'll think that he's in Maya. No, but he's doing this work of creation, creating offspring, and populating this material world, this material universe, on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada also, sometimes Srila Prabhupada would say, actually many times Srila Prabhupada would say, that people are criticizing us, my God brothers are criticizing me, Smarta Brahmanas are criticizing me, that we are awarding Brahmin initiation to people who are not coming from Brahminical families. Just like I was reading recently, that 3 great personalities did not enter the temple of Jagannath Puri. One is Haridas Thakur, one is Rupa Goswami, and one is Sanatan Goswami. Obviously we know Haridas Thakur because he was originally born in a Mohammedan family. And Chaitanya Charitamrita explains that Sanatan Goswami and Rupa Goswami had intimate connections with the Yavanas. So they followed the customs and they did not enter. And Srila Prabhupada also, before starting ISKCON, he also visited the temple of Jagannath Puri. But As soon as he brought his Western disciples and he saw that they were not allowed to enter, Srila Prabhupada also did not enter as well. So Srila Prabhupada, as an Acharya, changed the system, the standard, in terms of how many rounds we chant every day, in terms of the mixing of men and women in practicing Krishna consciousness in the temples, for example, in terms of preaching, how we preach. Srila Prabhupada revolutionized the standard as an Acharya. And for those who don't have the vision to see this, the transcendental vision to see this, they may criticize Srila Prabhupada, as Srila Prabhupada himself said many times. Therefore, it's explained, Vaishnava kriya mudra vigya na bujaya. That one should not judge an Vaishnava, a pure devotee, by his or her external symptoms, external occupation, external duties and activities that they do. Kriya and mudra. Work and qualities and characteristics. And one interesting example which comes to mind is that of Pundarik Vidyanidhi. Maybe you've heard of this devotee called Pundarik Vidyanidhi from Chaitanya Lila. So Pundarik Vidyanidhi was a very exalted Vaishnava. He was a direct disciple of Madhavendra Puri. So in that sense, it placed him on the platform of someone like Advaita Acharya, who's also a disciple of Madhavendra Puri, or Ishwar Puri, the spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya. So in fact, just as Lord Chaitanya treated Advaita Acharya just like his spiritual master, because he was on par with his spiritual master. So similarly, Pundarik Vidyanidhi was also on par with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's spiritual master as well. Apparently it seems, externally it seems, that Pundarik Vidyanidhi had some faults with him. For example, when he was in Jagannath Puri, visiting Jagannath Puri, in the Madhya Lila it's explained that during a festival known as Odana Shasti, that's how you say it, when they offer new cloth to the Lord, to Lord Jagannath. Now apparently the Brahmana, the priest who was offering this new cloth, it was still full of starch. The custom is that you don't offer a cloth to the Supreme Personality of Godhead which still has starch in it. You have to first wash the cloth, get the starch out, and then you offer the cloth. But this particular priest was offering a cloth which had starch in it. So apparently it seems that Pundarik Vidyanidhi found fault with this Brahmana, and he accused this Brahmana. Now that very night, according to Chaitanya Charitamrita, the two brothers, Lord Jagannath and Lord Balaram, they came in a dream to Pundarik Vidyanidhi and they started to slap him. You know, why did you interfere with this festival in this way? What was Pundarik Vidyanidhi's response? Was he afraid, like the Qazi, when Lord Nrsimha Dev came in his dream and placed his claws on the Qazi's chest, about to tear it apart? And he said, if you disturb my Sankirtan movement again, definitely I'll come and I'll do open heart surgery. No. When Lord Jagannath and Lord Baladev came and they slapped Pundarik Vidyanidhi in the dream, it's explained that Pundarik Vidyanidhi, he woke up with great ecstasy. So he did it as a service. But the Lord, in a very friendly and nurturing way, corrected his devotee. Now coming back to the point of Vaishnava Kriya Mudra Vigya Nabhujaya, Gadadhar Pandit, one of the members of the Panchatattva, again, apparently he saw some fault with Pundarik Vidyanidhi, and it's more to teach us an example of not to judge Vaishnavas, pure devotees, based on the external appearances. When he saw Pundarik Vidyanidhi, Gadadhar Pandit could see that he was possessed of great material opulence. Bhoga Aishwarya Prasaktanam Taya Prita Chetasam Vyavasayatmika Buddhir Samadhauna Vidyate. Krishna says, if one is attracted by Bhoga and Aishwarya, material opulence and material enjoyment, the resolute determination to perform pure devotional service does not arise, does not take place in the heart. So it was right, you could say,
for Gadadhar Pandit to be a little bit skeptical when he saw Pundarik Vidyanidhi. He was dressed very opulently. His house was decorated very gorgeously. He sat on a great dais, just like some reporters were criticizing Srila Prabhupada, right? You say you're a mendicant, then why are you riding on a Rolls Royce? Of course, we can see their envy in that. And Prabhupada very rightly told him, what to speak of, a Rolls Royce was just a hunk of metal, tin and metal. I should be riding on a golden chariot. And in that way he shut down the the reporters very nicely. So I remember Rajana Prabhu, he was also saying along this point that devotees should dress very nicely. Devotees should decorate themselves very nicely. Why? Because we're devotees of Suvasa, which is one of the names of Krishna. Suvasa means Krishna who dresses very nicely. So if we're devotees of Krishna and we decorate him very nicely, then we should not dress in a very niggardly way, in a very, poverty-stricken way. We should also dress very nicely. Of course, positives and disadvantages are there. It can mislead us. But Srila Prabhupada did make the point that in public we should appear as perfect gentlemen. Right? So if we dress, for example, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he took sannyas, he wore only the lower portion. But if our sannyasis in ISKCON traveled the earth, traveled to different countries wearing like that, then the people would not maybe appreciate it as much. So we see our sannyasis, they dress very nicely, just like perfect gentlemen. They iron their clothes very nicely, they wear the chadar very nicely, and they're very presentable. So to a degree, yes, externally we should appear to be very nicely presented, but not to the extent that that so-called Aishwarya gets in the way of our devotion to Krishna. It becomes an interference. So he saw Pundarik Vidyanidhi like this, and in his mind, Gadadhar Pandit apparently criticized him. But then, when Pundarik Vidyanidhi heard the verse which was glorifying Krishna as giving liberation to Putana, who came to kill Balakrishna, but to such a Dakini, to such a witch, he offered the position of a nurse in Golok Vrindavan. Then immediately Pundarik Vidyanidhi's reaction was unbecoming, given his material opulence. He started to throw things around. He was drinking things. He started to throw pots and pans around. He started to pull down the curtains in his house. And he became like a madman because of his ecstatic love, the bhava that he had within his heart. So what devotees have within their hearts may not necessarily reflect their outward position. So therefore, we should not judge pure devotees, not neophyte devotees, because for neophyte devotees who are affected by karma, yoga, jnana, these things can become a stumbling block from them developing that bhava, that relationship with Krishna, that attraction to Krishna. So in the same way, we should not judge Lord Brahma. He has a very opulent position, but at the same time, Brahma as our acharya is showing us that at each stage, we should take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now here it's explained that Brahma is struck with wonder at observing a wonderful boar-like form in the sky, which originally came from the nostril of Lord Brahma. Now, people from certain theistic backgrounds, they have difficulty understanding how is it that God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, can appear within the material world. Just like we see that Brahma's body is ultimately material. It's not transcendental. Brahma's body is made from subtle material matter. His body is made up from intelligence. So just like when a child comes from a human body, the child's body is also material. So one would consider that if something came from the body of Lord Brahma, then that body would also be material. But here we see that something transcendental is coming from the body of Lord Brahma, which is a material body. So how is it that the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears within the mature world? So people have a very difficult time understanding this. So the very simple understanding, Srila Prabhupada gave the example, is that of the king who constructs the prison house, but from time to time the king may visit the prison house to release some prisoners. So Krishna may appear within the mature world to release some of the prisoners in this mature world and give them liberation when he comes as an avatar. But as soon as this king steps into the prison house, it's not that he's handcuffed. Prison means handcuff. Prison means you have to wear an orange dress, or you have to wear a black and white striped dress. No. When the king appears within the prison house, he continues to wear his royal costume. He's not handcuffed, and he's not bound by the rules of the prison house. Not only is he not bound by the rules of the prison house, but he can liberate people from the rules of the prison house. So this is how Krishna can appear within the mature world, but be unaffected. Ajopisan aviyatma bhutanam ishwaropisan. Prakritim swamadisthaya sambhavami atmamaya. Krishna explains in the 4th chapter. Although I am unborn, although I am the master of all living entities, still I appear within this mature world. How? Sambhavami atmamaya. By dint of my own transcendental potency. And because Krishna comes like that, Krishna is unaffected. Just a side point, a technical point. When we read how Krishna took birth from Devaki, obviously it was not by natural means, by material means. It's often explained that Krishna came within the heart of Vasudeva, the mind of Vasudeva, then he went to the heart of Vasudeva, then he was transferred to the heart of Devaki. And then he took birth. And same thing is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita, that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first of all appeared in the mind of Jagannath Mishra, then he went to the heart of Sachimata. Now the Acharyas explain that when it mentions the heart of Sachimata, or when it mentions the heart of Devaki, that heart actually refers to the womb. So he was actually present within the womb. Also the heart, as Paramatma, but because the demigods pray, it's explained in the prayers of the demigods to Lord Krishna before he takes birth, the demigods actually pray that Krishna is present, dear Mother Devaki, in your womb. So as the Acharyas explain that yes, while Krishna is also present within the heart of Devaki, at the same time, he's also physically as well as transcendentally present within the womb of Devaki at the same time. So this is how the Supreme Personality of Godhead can appear. Another example on this point is, this is appearing in this example is given by the Acharyas in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the Uddhava Gita section. The example is given of a fair or a fete, like a carnival. When the local council or the local whatever institution, when it erects a big tent, right, and different vendors come. For kids, they have the different play stalls, food stalls, right, different amusement rides. Now, during that period, if that carnival is going to go for like 1 week or 2 weeks, then what happens? The local authorizing body hires a particular police officer to conduct the service of security. But the jurisdiction of that police officer is only within the carnival. So he can't go and arrest people outside the carnival. He only has jurisdiction for that particular time and for that jurisdiction of that carnival. And then, when the carnival is finished, everyone winds up their stalls, and then the particular duty officer, then, he's jobless again. That role is no longer needed anymore because the carnival is not there. So it's dependent on the carnival. So in the same way, Krishna comes as Paramatma. When this mature world is manifested, his jurisdiction is the mature world, and he only exists within the mature world as long as the mature world is manifested. But he's unaffected. Because originally, Antaryami, Paramatma, is an expansion of Krishna, who is transcendental to the material world. So this is how the Supreme Personality of Godhead can appear within the creation or come from a material body, in this case Brahma's body, but still be transcendental. Now another interesting point is that, yes, when this boar-like person came from the nostril of Brahma, immediately it started to grow, right? And that reminds us of another avatar of Krishna, which started to grow. Does anyone know who that is? Yeah, Matsya avatar. And I think Matsya avatar also came twice. Once in a previous kalpa of Brahma, I think. And he also saved the 4 Vedas, I believe, from a demon named Hayagriva. So Hayagriva is actually an incarnation of Krishna, but then in a certain kalpa, Hayagriva was actually in the name of a demon as well. So Matsya came that time. But then most recently Matsya came during the Chakshusha Manvantar. When Satyavrat, King Satyavrat was there, right? So one day he's doing his oblations in the water, the Kritamala river, and then a fish comes in his hand. Fish grows, he puts it in a jar. It grows, he puts it in a well. It grows, he puts it in a pond. It grows, he puts it in a sea. It grows. I don't know how he transferred it when it got so big. But then eventually it was so big that it started swimming in the universal waters. The universe has a diameter of 4 billion miles. I don't know how long Matsya was. Maybe 9 miles or something like that. Or so many yojanas. But anyway, just like Varaha is appearing like that and constantly growing, Matsya also appeared. So by that, these sages could surmise, Lord Brahma could surmise that this is a transcendental personality, definitely. But still, they began to argue. It says here, Brahma with great brahmanas like Marichi, which is one of his Manasaputras. And Marichi comes from Lord Brahma's mind. So when you can just imagine, when Marichi is thinking and speculating, then definitely Brahma is also doing that as well. As well as the Kumars and Manu, began to argue in various ways. Is this some extraordinary entity come in the pretense of a boar? It is very wonderful that he has come from my nose. Things that come from our nose aren't very transcendental usually. But Krishna can do that. Right? So Krishna can appear from anywhere and remain transcendental. He is Swarat. He's independent. Now, how do we ascertain the transcendental nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? I remember when, this was like more than 10 years ago, when in Bhakti Shastri days, when we were studying chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, that time one of the questions in the exam was, how do we ascertain that a certain avatar is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? How do we know it's not a bogus incarnation? So I remember writing down on my exam different things. So if it's a genuine incarnation, then the body will be transcendental. If it's a genuine incarnation, then the incarnation will perform superhuman, supramundane activities, uncommon activities. The classic example is Lord Krishna showing his Vishwarup in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, along with n number of things which he did, like holding up Govardhan Hill, like that. So the incarnation will perform superhuman activities. Another important point is that the incarnation will have markings of Krishna on their lotus hands, the lotus feet. Even someone like Prithu Maharaj, who is considered to be a Shaktivish incarnation. So he's actually a jiva, but is empowered by Krishna to act in a certain way. For him it was rulership, to administer rulership, law and order. So he's empowered in that way. But because he was directly empowered by Krishna even though he was a jiva, he had certain limited markings on his body. But of course, when Krishna comes, he's full of all markings. And let me just read something from Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is in Adi Leela section, and it's how Lord Chaitanya's parents, Jagannath Mishra and Shachimata, began to ascertain that their little Nimai was actually maybe Narayan. So they used to see in their house, I'm guessing their house was not tiled or didn't have a vinyl floor or a marble floor or anything like that. It was a simple village house. So it must have had some sort of soil, some sort of, properly laid out dirt like that, being a house in a village. So it's explained that they would see marks of little babies, little hand marks, little feet marks in their house, and these marks would have symbols of a conch shell, a disc, right? The elephant goat, all these different markings. But they couldn't imagine that these markings were from Nimai. So this is explained in chapter 14 of Adi Leela. When Jagannath Mishra saw the wonderful marks on the soles of his son, he became very much joyful and privately called for Nilambar Chakravarti, who is the father of Shachimata. So the father-in-law of Jagannath Mishra. I'm not sure if is he Gargamuni? Does anyone know if he's Gargamuni? Because he actually did the astrological calculations for Nimai as well, as did Gargamuni in Krishna Leela. But anyway, we continue. When Nilambar Chakravarti saw those marks, he smilingly said, "Formerly I ascertained all this by astrological calculation and noted it in writing. There are 32 bodily markings that symptomize a great personality, and I see all those marks on the body of this child." So Prabhupada in the purport, he talks about these 32 bodily markings. But in the translation of the next verse, it says, there are 32 bodily symptoms of a great person. 5 of his bodily parts are large, 5 are fine, 7 are reddish, 6 parts are raised, 3 parts are small, 3 parts are broad, and 3 parts are grave. So if you want to know the details of what those parts are, that's in the 15th verse of the 14th chapter of Adi Leela. You can have a look. The baby has all the symptoms of Lord Narayan on the palms and soles. He will be able to deliver the world. This child will preach the Vaishnava cult and deliver both his maternal and paternal families. So they were able to ascertain this simply by looking at these bodily markings. And they also appear not only on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but as I was explaining in regards to Prithu Maharaj, they also appear in the body of his devotees. If you've all seen pictures of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, you'll see that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's arms are very long, right? Almost they're reaching up to his knees. So this is one of the features of a saintly personality. Their arms are very long as well. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's name, I forgot the name, but it shows that his arms are very big, like that, when he used to raise his arms. This is from the first canto, The Appearance of Shukadev Goswami, and how the sages ascertained his divine nature. At that moment, there appeared a powerful son of Vyasadeva who traveled all over the earth, disinterested and satisfied within himself. He did not manifest any symptoms of belonging to any social order. Shukadev Goswami, just by looking at him, he was a 16-year-old boy, Digambar, which means dressed by the directions, which means actually naked. But in the Vedic Shastras, they don't directly say naked, they say dressed by the directions. He was surrounded with women and children, and he dressed as if others had neglected him. So basically he was naked. This son of Vyasadeva was only 16 years old. His legs, hands, thighs, arms, shoulders, forehead, and other parts of his body were all delicately formed. His eyes were beautifully wide, and his nose and ears were highly raised. He had a very attractive face, and his neck was well formed and beautiful like a conch shell. Krishna's neck is also described to be beautiful like a conch shell. It has lines, his neck, just like the lines which are there on a conch shell. His collarbone was fleshy, his chest was broad and thick, his navel deep, and his abdomen beautifully striped. His arms were long, and curly hair was strewn all over his beautiful face. He was naked, and the hue of his body reflected that of Lord Krishna. So we see two other personalities in Krishna Lila who are exactly like Lord Krishna because they're so intimately related to Krishna. One is Uddhava, and does anyone know who the other one is? Sorry? No, that's not the, maybe, but that's not the answer I'm looking for. It's the son of Krishna from Rukmini. Pradyumna. Pradyumna also, Srimad Bhagavatam explains, looked exactly like Lord Krishna, even though he was Krishna's son. So the women in Krishna's palace used to mistake him for being Lord Krishna. He was blackish and very beautiful due to his youth. Because of the glamour of his body and his attractive smiles, he was very pleasing to women. Though he tried to cover his natural glories, the great sages present there were all very expert in the art of physiognomy, and so they honored him by rising from their seats. So the whole theme of this sort of section of Bhagavatam, at least what I was trying to bring out, was that we should not judge a Vaishnava based on their external characteristics. It's more the mood, the internal mood of the Vaishnava. Krishna is known as Bhava Grahi Janardana. So he more appreciates the sentiments of the devotee inside. At the same time, there are external ways to identify great devotees and to identify Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there are scientific ways. Another way to identify a bona fide avatar is that the avatar is mentioned in the Shastra. Even Lord Chaitanya, who is a Gupta avatar, a hidden incarnation, is still mentioned in the Shastra. But this can only be done by great devotees who are expert in the art of physiognomy, like the sages who had assembled there on the banks of the Ganges with Maharaj Parikshit, or someone like Nilambar Chakravarti. They can ascertain. But generally we should not judge Vaishnavas based on their external work. Again, I say pure devotees. So finish here. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai.